Hey guys, this is the Blue Collar Future Podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Robison, and we've got Roger Scheck with us. Is that how you say your name?
That's right, yeah.
Roger, how you doing?
Doing great.
I'm glad you joined me because it's a little last minute. There's been times before where I haven't had a guest, and I'm just forced to do a solo episode when it's supposed to be a guest episode, and it's never good. So it's a little last minute, so I appreciate you joining me.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. So we'll just kind of get right into it. We were talking before we started recording, but what is it that you do?
So I am a licensed general contractor in North Carolina, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and I focus on residential remodels and additions.
Did you find me from the episode I did with Kip?
Yes, actually. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I seem to maybe remember seeing you around that time. That would make sense. You guys are in the sort of the same industry, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a general contractor, but at one point in my life, I wanted to be the best tile guy in Winston-Salem.
Yeah.
But realized I can make a lot more money as a general contractor than a tile installer.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I'm not sure what the labor rates and stuff like are over there, but it seems like people come to different conclusions everywhere. I think it maybe comes down to what you like to do and want to do, because I know a lot of people that claim they can make more money at their trade than being a general contractor, but you would think that being a general contractor, you'd be able to make more money just because you maybe can run more projects and higher dollar amounts at the same time. I don't know. It's interesting.
That's what I have found.
Yeah.
I've only got so much of me, and utilizing my capacity, I can manage 4 or 5 jobs. I can manage $500,000, $700,000 at a time versus doing a $5,000 or $6,000 tile job.
So you can manage multiple jobs and high dollar amounts essentially from.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I started my education a long time ago with my dad. My dad used to renovate things for fun. If he got a bonus at work, we'd put a new roof on, or we'd do an addition or something like that. So when I got back into it after college, I started flipping houses. So I went and taught myself a lot of things, from the electrics to plumbing to tile to framing, all of that stuff, and practiced on houses that I was flipping versus someone else's property.
I see a lot of people nowadays on Instagram that know a lot of different trades, and it's always, people are always using the derogatory term jack of all trades, master of none. It's been sticking with me a lot, because from my own experience, I feel like knowing a lot about different trades and then being the expert in one at least is a better course of action than only ever sticking to your one trade. So like doing all of that stuff, renovating your house, doing all that stuff on your own is a really good way to learn about all these other trades and actually apply it to your own. Is that something that you've kind of found out?
I couldn't agree more. It's exactly, as a general contractor, especially, you have to understand that there's a lot of guys that walk into a job and they don't really know what the plumber's doing or the electrician's doing or any of those codes. So I can speak to a homeowner, and when they want to do something, I'll say, well, we can't do that because it doesn't meet the electrical code. We have to do this. And it usually impresses them because no other general contractor is talking about the trades and what the codes are. So it gives, and trades that understand other trades, my tile guy thinks ahead to what the glass guy's going to need, what the plumber's going to need. It makes for a better trade person if you think of the other trades that are coming behind you.
That seems to be an issue that a lot of people run into, where there's work that's done by other trades that's not really thinking about people coming behind them, and it just screws up whole projects and costs everybody more time and money. So yeah, knowing about other trades and at least how your trade affects other trades, so that you can, I don't even know if I want to say do it properly, but just is better than the other way around,
I've seen a lot of things where people aren't considering the next trade, and then you've got to fix something, you got to stop something, you got to redo it, your job gets delayed. And when you hire the best of the best and they're thinking about the people before them, I look better because I have a smoother job and we don't have delays.
Yeah. It's interesting. So when did you start being a general contractor then? Because you said you were tile guy.
So long story, grew up My dad worked for Texaco. He was a field hand. He had a really, really good job. And he told me that, my kind of job doesn't exist anymore. You got to go to school. You got to go get a degree. And that was further pushed in high school, where they told me it doesn't matter what degree you get, just go get a degree. And I was like, okay, I'll be a filmmaker. So I spent $100,000 on a degree in filmmaking, spent 8 years in LA fighting that battle right as the economy collapsed, and got stuck in reality TV and basically hated my life. So I made the decision. I had these reality TV connections and ended up on House Hunters Renovations, and they remodeled the kitchen, and my wife and I remodeled the bathrooms. And my dad put the bug in my ear again. He said, if this film thing doesn't work out, you can move back to North Carolina and become a general contractor. So about a month later, my house was sold there. I'd bought 2 foreclosures here and we moved back. I started flipping, started a Facebook fan page, and people saw my work, started doing like handyman stuff, putting in cat doors, fixing doorknobs, deck refacing, stuff like that. The projects got bigger and bigger. And as I was flipping, I was showing bathrooms and kitchens, and people started asking me to remodel for them. And here, you can't do any work at that time over $30,000 without a general contractor's license. So I kept my limits low until one day I got a job offer to work in a high-end neighborhood and do a $160,000 basement. And I couldn't legally do it, so they liked my work, they liked me, and they said, would you go take the test so you can do this job? So I took the test, I passed, and the rest is basically history. That's how I got into it, kind of full time. And that was, I started in 2015, so my company's about 10 years old.
Nice. That rough for newer businesses. All right. So are you saying from 2015 is before you got your general contractor's license when you started doing it, or after?
I've only been licensed for about 5 years, so half of that. I was doing, and again, that's how I was able to think of all the trades, because I was installing the cabinets, I was hooking up the sink. I was laying the floor. I knew about the trim mold that was needed because I was trimming the door casings. And one of the when I decided to start subcontracting, I went out and found everybody that was better than me. And that's been my business model. They always had to outperform me, and they always do, because a little bit like that jack of one, master of none, I'm okay at a lot of things. I'm definitely not the best trim carpenter out there, so I went and found the best trim carpenter for my final product as a general contractor.
Well, without any experience in the trades either, it's hard to tell apart maybe some of the contractors. Like, you can hire on a contractor and they might not be as good as you think. Like, a lot of people don't pay much attention. I know, especially from my experience with a lot of people go the cheapest route with concrete, choose a really crappy contractor, and nobody ever really notices, nobody pays attention. So unless you start paying attention to the quality of flat work, it's really hard. Like, nobody really looks down and examines their stuff. So
concrete was actually my dad's favorite thing to do. So I lot of wheelbarrows of concrete in my day.
We try not to wheelbarrow if we can avoid it. That stuff's not very fun.
Yeah, it was. I remember pouring the patio behind our house, and I couldn't have been 10 or 12 years old. And they had they had a concrete truck, but we live in a small town. There was no pumping. It was wheelbarrowed back around, and I would carry that wheelbarrow half full, and it was heavy, man.
Yeah, it's not very fun. Nowadays, they have a lot of other solutions, like the little basically powered wheelbarrows that have tracks and stuff. Like, we actually went down the World of Concrete, and some people were trying to sell us on those, and we're like, you know what? If we can't pump it or pull a truck in, we don't want to do it, quite frankly. It's not very fun. So you went to school for filmmaking, though. That's interesting. That's quite a bit different than
It is.
So how is that?
I moved to North Carolina to go to the North Carolina School of the Arts. It was touted as the trade school of filmmaking, which at the time it was. But, I had no idea I was going to have to spend $100,000 to accomplish a degree that essentially, when I got to Los Angeles, everybody's like, yeah, we don't care. Just go, move this light stand. Like, a lot of those kids made friends there and had connections and were able to work together out there. I worked 40, 50 hours a week while I was in college because that was the only way I could do it. When I got to LA, it was just the film industry vaporized, which was part of the problem because the economy collapsed and all the money was gone and it was just reality TV. So, it's frustrating that I graduated in 2006 and I'm still paying on student loans because I was given the directive to go to college, get any degree, and you'll be fine.
Yeah. It's really sad because there's not hardly a push at all towards trade work from high school or any of that level. But the problem that I've seen is they also don't help that much with finding out what kids actually want to do and then figuring out how to help them achieve that without all of the student loan. It's almost like a base level of figuring out what you want to do and then just saying like, yeah, you need to go to college, you need to go to college. And so then all these kids end up going and then they get there and it's like, well, I don't think I want to do this. So they switch to a different degree and they end up years later, completely different degree or don't even use their degree and a bunch of student loan debt. And then they're like left thinking, well, what was that even for? So it's really weird. It's a weird landscape nowadays.
It is. And what I see, especially as a content creator, is when I say something negative about college, somebody that is very pro college will come up in the comments and say, well, you were a filmmaker. Now you're making content. Look at this. I didn't need to spend $100,000 to make content. So
I was going to say that probably does help, thoh. That probably is very useful.
It definitely helps. But the reality is I'm shooting everything on an iPhone. I stand by a window with good lighting. I understand lighting. But, $100,000 for that, I don't know.
Well, you never know. The opinion I have on the schooling is like, I sort of understand why people push you there because it is important to learn things, right? And so
absolutely.
So I get that. And you can take what you learn there and apply it other places. The problem is it's too expensive and it takes too long. So like you say, you don't need $100,000 to learn how to be a content creator. And you don't need that to be what you're doing right now, but it may at some point help you down the line. It's just, to what degree does it really help? How much does it actually help you? Especially if you're not even using your degree for what it was for, which is what happens to a lot of people. What I'm seeing now, especially with a lot of trade stuff, but like there's a lot of careers that the degree isn't as useful anymore. It's what can you do? Can you show that you know how to do this? Like, especially in software programming, computer programming, if you have a long history of doing it on your own and you can show a bunch of projects, you can get hired on as a computer engineer or a software developer or whatever, and they don't care as much. If you can show that you know how to do it, that's all they care about.
There's a lot of companies out there like VaynerMedia now. They don't want you to have a degree. They're hiring people. This is a very big company, and they're like, we don't want college graduates. So the tides are changing.
Yeah. Well, and I would hope that a lot of people make that switch because there's a lot of jobs out there that you could get by with on-the-job training. And I think a lot of people that think they need to go to college don't actually. So what I'm always telling people is that you should get out there and get some real-life experience and figure out what you actually want to do, because you can't expect 18-year-old kids to go to college and just know what they want to do. And that's the problem is they jump around, they can't figure it out, spend money, and end up with a degree they don't want.
Yeah, I don't, it's people think I'm not anti-college, doctors, lawyers, engineers, these are valid degrees, but $100,000 degree in cinematography, I question that. Student loan debt is the number one asset of the U.S. government. So do with that information what you will.
Yeah.
I am very, very pro education. I just got a lot of problems with the push for college sake.
Yeah. So I actually went to school for electrical engineering, and from my experience, they could probably cut that education down by half. And realistically, a lot of the stuff you need to know in each job, you could probably be trained on the job with some sort of education training program. If people could figure out a way to do that, because the schooling, I talk to engineers all the time about stuff I was doing at school, and they're like, oh, I don't even remember that. I don't even know that. And So it's like, well, why am I learning stuff that you don't use regularly, aside from just, because the problem is you end up wasting all this time and money learning things you don't need, and it helps you think, critical thinking skills and all of that sort of stuff. But if you don't need it, then you don't need it, and it's just a waste of time, and it's just a way for them to charge you more money for the same thing.
Well, I think there's a capability of a teacher as well. Unfortunately, a lot of people fall into teaching as, well, I guess I can be a teacher. I know in high school, that's a lot of my teachers just picked teaching, and they weren't great teachers. So, I had a very smart friend of mine once. I said, algebra, what was the point? I don't use algebra. And he stepped back and said, look, algebra wasn't about algebra. It was about critical thinking. It was to teach you how to get from A to Z. And they didn't teach us that in high school. They just, in fact, my algebra teacher told me, yeah, you'll never use this. Just learn it. If there was more, logic and reason to why you need to know this, how you're going to use this, how you're going to apply this, maybe we would have been more receptive to it.
Yeah. I mean, I resonate with that. I got pretty far into my math requirements. I think I got all of my math requirements done for my bachelor's degree in engineering. So, and that's your 70-80% of the way to a math degree. So it's a lot of math. And that was the part that started to bother me, because we were in classes with theoretical mathematicians and stuff, learning stuff that don't need to know. And there's at some point where you do not need that much of it. You could have specific like engineering math courses where you're going to learn critical thinking, which is what they want you to do, and learn everything you need to know, and then the basis around it, and move on instead of wasting all this time. So I do get the critical thinking aspect, but they can't figure out how to tailor education to each person. So it's unfortunate, and it's the way the education system is set up. It's not set up to help students think for themselves, really figure out what they want to do and come to the conclusion on their own, and all that. It's like, get in line, do what I say, learn this just because type of education. So I think, like you said, at some point education was worth it. Nowadays, maybe not so much. It's hard to say anymore.
Well, college education, I think is,
yes.
Yeah, I just think college for college's sake. It's just, I don't get it.
Like if you're just going just to go, then that's an issue. But the education's still important. You still need to learn. Still need to be
correct,
knowledgeable in general, and then also be learning whatever it is that you want to do, all of the specifics for that, and then just continue learning as you grow. But the college has been touted as the way you do it, and it doesn't necessarily need to be, especially with the internet and how much information is available out there. So is your business just you, or do you have employees?
So I don't have employees, but I was the owner, one of 4 owners of a company that had about a $1.5 million payroll.
Wow.
I think we had 15 employees at one point, and that wasn't the right fit for me. I was there for 3 years, and there was a mutual decision that I should leave. I went back on my own, and I decided to keep my overhead down and compete in the high-end market. I would just stay me and subcontract. So that's what I do. I manage contractors and homeowner expectations and budgets. I have assembled some of the best subcontractors for 100 miles, whether it's carpentry or tile or, my electricians and plumbers. I have one of each, and I don't really, a lot of people want to work with me, but I know what product I deliver, and I know what I can deliver, and I can compete in an ultra high-end market here for less money because I don't have the buildings and the trucks and the superintendents.
Yeah, that's super important. The finding subs that you like to work with, and their quality, and that they like to work with you, and keeping them is something that a lot of general contractors have a hard time with. And building that relationship so that there's never like some little misunderstanding isn't just going to like set you guys off and cause a rift in that relationship, because that's super important. You can only deliver as good of a job to your client as they can do for you. And that open line of communication that open line of communication needs to be super clear.
I agree. Without them, I have nothing. And I'm super grateful for the people that have chosen to work with me. And one of the big differences between me and other general contractors, I think, is I actually appreciate and respect my subs. There's a lot of guys that have this God complex as general contractor. My plumber works for another contractor that has been specifically told, it doesn't matter what you think, you do what I say. And it's like, he's the plumber. He knows the best way to do it. So the other thing is I pay really, really fast. I have gone to the gymnastics meet of one of my carpenters to pay him the day he finished because I wanted to make sure he was happy. I don't do the net 30-90 pays. So I pay everybody immediately.
Yeah. Yeah,
and as my painter said, fast payment makes for fast friends. So they'll actually prioritize my jobs over another general contractor's. But the problem general contractors get into is a lot of the times they're terrible business people. They don't understand money management, and they have to operate in a way where they're taking money from job A to pay job B because they don't understand the business of it. So they've got to make their subs wait for money because they just don't have it because they haven't managed it properly.
Yeah. It gets super hard, especially if you've got a bunch of projects going on and they're taking on too much and they don't have that experience. It's a lot of things to keep on top of and to make sure that everything is scheduled properly and problems are dealt with and people are paid on time. It is a lot of work to do right. And so I think that's why a lot of people just don't. It's hard to find a good general contractor to work for. So I actually know a lot of people that hate working for that reason because they've never found or had a good experience with any. And so then it's just like, okay, well, working for a general contractor sucks, so I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. And I've got one guy that works for me and one other guy. That's it,
Mm-hmm.
and we keep him busy enough to where that he can survive and do that.
Yeah, we have some general contractors around here that are big volume builders that do that with a lot of their trades, especially the framers. Like they have multiple framing crews that are subs working for them and they have enough houses to keep them all busy. I think it depends on the trade because like certain trades, unless you find a contractor that has like a lot of houses, like hundreds of houses, it's hard to stay busy with one. So yeah, it's a hard thing to manage there as a sub. Because like, how do you split up your time between working for general contractors and maybe like trying to do some homeowner type stuff, being your own contractor with the homeowner type stuff? Like we've found we like to stick to general contractors just because we have a lot of good relationships and we can stay busy. But a lot of people, I feel like, don't ever get to that point because they don't want to put in the work it takes to build relationships and go through that process of finding good generals to work for. So they end up quitting after like working for 2 or 3 maybe that strung them out on payments and screwed them over on jobs and stuff. It's hard. It's a hard thing to manage on either side. So being in your situation though, where people are trying to knock down your door essentially to work for you is better, I would say, right? So
I'm super fortunate. I'm very grateful for the clients I have and the subs I have and the business I've created. I witness a lot of other guys struggle. I've got it good, but I've worked at it and earned it and lost money to make things right. Take a financial hit to make sure that the homeowner and the subcontractors are taken care of.
Well, and that's what it takes. A lot of GCs only look out for themselves and then just play the blame game, and then just string people out on payments. So there's a lot of problems there, I think, when you're trying to find people to work for. So do you guys mainly do remodels or new construction or?
So I pretty much stay remodels and additions. I tried to dip my toe in new construction, and frankly, I don't know how they're building for what they're building for. I know they are. They don't build like I build. So the square foot price model that is financed by banks, I can't build for what those guys are building for. I've got a really great trim carpenter that was approached by a big $1 million builder. He's building $1 million houses, and he wanted him to trim out this 4,000 square foot house, and his bid was $18,000. Well, the next highest bid was $10,000.
Yeah.
How do you compete?
Yeah.
I can't. And then when you go into this $1 million house, the trim carpentry reflects a $10,000 bid. There's inexperienced guys making $20 an hour and not paying taxes and moving as fast as they can so they can get to the next $10,000 bid. So I just I don't want to build that house.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's what happens. People get into the bidding competition, and it's essentially trying to cut corners and just get it done nowadays, because everything costs so much money that it's hard to build that full house with like really high quality people that are getting paid really well. And that adds another layer. It's hard to work in that world and pay your guys well and make sure you're making money, while the general contractor is essentially just trying to get everything as cheap as he can, even on $1 million home. You know,
Absolutely.
they're trying, like, and that's a problem with them, certain general contractors that have taken their approach of trying to be the absolute cheapest out there in order to get the job. So they're just cutting every single corner they can to try to save money, because they only got the job because they were cheaper in the first place.
Which is why I've stayed in remodels. I think people appreciate the details more. And, you know, a homeowner really wants somebody that is invested in their home and cares about their quality of life through the renovation, which I feel like I excel at. You're coming into somebody's house, which takes a lot of trust. They're giving you keys to their house. They're not there. You've got people coming and going. So having those good subcontractors that might cost a little more that you can trust, that aren't going to gouge their hardwood floors or steal a watch, it's super important walking into somebody's home that's occupied.
Yeah. That's the key with remodel type stuff, is like a lot of times people with remodels and additions, they're spending more money than I think you're going to realistically gain in value of the home. So I see that a lot. Like, I mean, say you have $1 million remodel, it's not really going to add $1 million in value to the home, but people are fine with it. Like, maybe they like the house, maybe it's paid off and they don't want to move. So their options are essentially add-on, remodel, that type of stuff. So they're willing to pay for the extra quality, because it's not necessarily, okay, we're going to put as little money in this as possible to get as much value out of it, like a new construction build.
Well, the ROI on renovation has changed so drastically in the past 5 years. You know, a high-end bathroom 5 years ago here, and I know people are going to think this is insane and that we overcharge, but I promise you, it's 10% profit, 10% overhead. I'm not overcharging.
Mm-hmm.
It costs more to do it here. 5 years ago, that bathroom was $63,000. Today, it's $83,000.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's an insane number. I get that, but that's what it costs here. And I'm not taking home 40 grand. You know, it's 10% profit, 10% overhead. The rest is what the subs cost and the material cost and the permits and porta-johns. And, you know, there's guys that can cut corners and not pull permits and do it faster and cheaper, but that's just not the way I do it as a legitimate business. You know, employee taxes are like 15%. People don't understand that. You know, if a W-2 employee in a regular job, like an office job, doesn't understand that if they're making $17 an hour, their employer is having to double that on his billing side and make profit on top of it and pay all his overhead. You know, he might be charging $50 or $60 an hour for that employee to whoever he's billing.
Yeah. People don't know how much the employees cost. And so they'll get bids from people that are unlicensed, paying their guys cash, and they can be so much cheaper than someone who is a licensed contractor that's paying their guys well. Because on one hand, not only are you paying your guys well, you have extra costs on top of it. And so you'll send out bids and won't even get answers back sometimes, because people are like, holy crap, that's way more than I thought it was going to be. How could it possibly be that much? Like, you get people that sit here and pick apart or they go get multiple bids and they're like, oh, well, this person's this much and this person's that much. It's like, well, their job's going to reflect that. The quality is going to reflect that. And I guarantee they're not paying their guys well, and they're probably paying them cash. And you can go down the line and find all the reasons why they might be so much cheaper. It's always coming back to the cheaper is not always better argument. But a lot of people don't know that until they've gotten screwed by someone who's cheaper and end up paying for it twice.
Unfortunately, with my social media content, it has put me in a position to where I get those calls of, this guy, here in North Carolina, you can do a job under $40,000, market yourself as a general contractor. And there's a lot of guys out there that are bidding that way at $39,500 when it was a $70,000 job. I have had to repair and fix dozens and dozens of jobs. And then I've been to dozens and dozens of jobs where the homeowner didn't have 70, they had 39.5, but the job can't be done for that. So they're left with a mess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's super unfortunate. Seriously, the landscape has changed a ton in the last couple of years with like supply shortages and just cost going up on everything. I feel like exacerbated the problem what it was before, especially since COVID even. I mean, even like I would almost say COVID is part of the tipping point there because that really changed a lot of the landscape. And it was weird back then because you had people getting all of the stimulus money and just staying home and dumping it into their homes. So a bunch of people had a bunch of extra money to spend, but just the cost went up so much that it's just been crazy. I mean, it's been a roller coaster since then.
Yeah. I mean, my estimates back then were good for 7 days. That's how wild the prices fluctuated.
Yeah.
I did a big garage on the lake here, and in the we didn't have terms on our contracts at the time as far as it's only valid for X amount of days. We saw a quote in 7 days go up $5,000 in lumber, and we had to eat it. We were under contract. We had to do it. You just took the hits and moved on. It was really frustrating. We've gone from 7-day clauses in our contracts to now 30-day clauses. So it's gotten better. They more stabilized, but that whole it's coming down thing is not real.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's definitely been coming back around. Back then we were dealing with supply shortages and cost changes like insane. I remember people were getting stuck with a home that they could barely afford and their lumber package nearly doubled. And they're just left wondering what to do because they can't afford all of the extra money in lumber because it literally doubled like in a few months. And it stayed high for quite a long time, but it would go up and down and fluctuate like crazy. So, I mean, people just got stuck at the wrong time building and ended up in their house being, 50% higher than they were supposed to because of the crazy fluctuation in numbers. Lumber was the absolute worst on it. I mean, I don't know how the rest of the country was, but here it was all over the place.
Lumber took the hardest
stealing
hit.
lumber from people stealing from job sites jumped up a ton because lumber was so expensive. They're just driving around taking it. It was wild.
But again, copper wire, that's under lock and key now. If you go into a big box store, like you got to get somebody to unlock a roll of copper wire because it's so expensive now. PVC and PEX all went up, everything,
That's something I didn't know. I didn't realize it went up so much. One of my friends is a landscaper and was telling me how much sprinkler systems have gone up essentially because of all of the extra cost in the PVC and all of that in the system. And it's crazy. I didn't even realize. I mean, the numbers, I was like, are you kidding me? I mean, it has to be way harder to get landscaping jobs nowadays because it seems like it nearly doubles in price on the materials.
And then, here at least, plumbers and electricians were having to give huge raises because big companies were fishing good employees and offering them ridiculous amounts of money. So when the plumber, now his truck went from $60,000 to $120,000 to buy a new truck, fuel is up. He's had to give his employee a massive raise, which affects workers' comp and liability insurance, which are up. It's this trickle down thing that people don't realize what it takes to run a business now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, and the social media landscape is making everybody want to run a business. So you got a bunch of people starting businesses that probably shouldn't just because they want to. So that's another weird thing. People are going to college because just because that's what you do to be successful, or they're starting a business just because that's what you do to be successful, and getting trial by fire. Like, it's like, what's a good route anymore? It's almost like all of the information coming at you is just in somebody else's best interest and not your own.
It's a weird world, man. It's tough for an 18-year-old kid to say, I want to do this for the rest of my life. Whatever it is, doctor, lawyer, electrician. When I was 18, I'd have thought, general contractor, shoot me, man. I want to be an artist. I want to make movies, and then I wanted to be Quentin Tarantino. And today, if my phone rang and Quentin Tarantino said, hey, here's $60 million, I want you to make whatever you want to make, I'd say, nah, I'm going to stay here and remodel bathrooms. I'm not even interested. So, life changes so much, perspective changes so much. You get married, you have kids, different things become important.
Yeah. Well, and I think like that's why I push to trades a lot, especially for younger kids, because there's not a huge commitment.
Right.
And you can jump around to different trades if you'd like. But like if you try one and you don't quite like it, but you keep at it, at some point, like almost anything can become really enjoyable if you can find a reason for it. But you can jump around and figure out what you like to do and what you don't like to do. I think that approach has really taken a hit nowadays, because it's like everybody's wanting to push you to something for their own reasons, for their own gain. Like if you follow the money, like what reason do people have to tell you to go to college? Well, the whole freaking system is making a bunch of money on you going to college. But like the sooner you get locked into college degree, student loan payments, get a job, go get a house and a mortgage, you're pretty well stuck at anything that you're doing. You probably have a job that's paying quite a bit, but you have a bunch of debt that you need to be paying off, and you don't have very much freedom. You can't do anything you want to do. You pretty much are in line and stuck in what you're doing, the way to keep you where you're at. And I don't want to be that cynical, but it's kind of.
Well, happiness is really underrated. We think we have to go make a bunch of money and be miserable in the process. Maybe making $40,000 a year and being happy is a better life. You can make really good money in the trades if you work at it and work your way up, own your own business, and you could be a one-man business and still make great money. You don't have to have employees. I learned a long time ago that happiness is really undervalued and really underspoken about. It's just not, it's not pushed enough.
Yeah. Well, what I've been noticing, especially through these conversations I've had and people I've talked to that have gone to school forever, like from what I've noticed, the more money you make, essentially the more money you spend, and you just end up getting locked into this lifestyle and stuck spending a ton of money and having to make a ton of money too. So being able to live below your means and not just spending money willy-nilly is almost just the way you need to go to be successful. Because people they just get into a job that pays them well, and they just start spending everything they make on things that they think are going to make them happy. But really all it is to satisfy urges and to impress people and all that type of stuff. So.
Well, it's all marketing and pushing the machine forward and consumerism. New iPhone every year. We've got a better camera. I need a new iPhone.
Yeah.
I need an 80-inch TV. Watching reruns of Friends on the 70-inch TV isn't good enough. And the car's paid off. Let's go get a new car. And it's just material things are touted as success and happiness. And really people just need to go inside and find a little bit of peace and internal happiness instead.
We're such a stuff-driven economy. That's kind of like, the more I think about it, the more it's like, you make money, you buy stuff. Instead of you make money, you save it and do things that you like to do. It's like you buy things, and that's how a lot of people think that it's going to make them happy, just by spending all their money and buying stuff. Maybe some people it works for, but most people just ends up creating more stress and doesn't lead to any fulfillment. And they're looking outward instead of inward at their own life and family. Like building a family and taking care of your family and spending time with your family. I mean, that's usually what gives people fulfillment and happiness, instead of all of these things that we don't need, but we have. Everybody has, a lot of the poorest people that you see have all of the newest stuff, the iPhones, the toys, everything.
My wife and I have prioritized, events. We take one big trip every year.
Mm-hmm.
So experiences and teaching our kids about living in the moment more.
Mhm.
We do have iPhones, but we don't get a new iPhone until, it doesn't work anymore. So there's a happy medium.
Yeah.
I think we all want stuff, but I've had the same TV for 9 years. I don't need a bigger TV to watch reruns.
Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, right now I'm recording on this laptop I bought while I was in school for $400, and it was a refurbished laptop. That it's like, I buy a lot of stuff, but I also don't need to be getting new things constantly and spending all of my money on everything. I mean, like even on the iPhone thing, I had the same iPhone for 4 years or something. It started to degrade, and so I got a new one. Little things I try to do to not just like spend every single dollar I make. And I don't want to be virtue signaling here. It's not a huge deal, but it's just little things like that. I don't need to go drive the biggest, nicest vehicle, and I don't need all of these nice toys to try to make everybody think I'm cool or something. So I think priorities change a lot when you get married, but also once you start to have kids. For most people, the priorities change. Unless you've become too entrenched, I guess, in
Right.
the stuff by then. But that's the biggest thing that I can't grasp. If you are somebody that is not excited to get home to your family, like if you went on vacation or a work trip or something and you weren't excited to get home to see your family, I mean, I don't understand how you could live like that, but there are people out there like that. So, I mean, to me, that's all that matters anymore. So I don't care what other people say or think. It's like, what does my family think? So,
Well, for me, I don't leave the house before 9. I'm home by 4 or 5 every day. I don't work weekends. We take a couple big trips a year. The only thing that matters to me is my wife and kids. I don't golf. I don't hunt. I don't fish. I don't go out with the boys and drink. I don't go mudding. I want to spend every single second I can with my family because the time's so short. That's literally all I care about. And I work to make sure that I can do that. So That's just what I have found to be important in my life.
yeah. Well, that's what it comes down to, is figuring out what you want to, like, figuring out a purpose behind why you're working and what you're doing. And I think what I've come to see is people that really love what they do also have things that they really want to work for, because we have this dream job idea where people are like pushed. They're like pushed to this idea of a dream job. And it's almost like if you don't love it immediately, it's not worth it. But if you're working for a purpose, you can come to enjoy just about anything. And you can really come to enjoy things that you're gaining skills on the job, and it's allowing you to provide for your family. I see a lot of people do that. I see it happen to a lot of people. Like, you have an ambition, let's say, to become the best tile guy out there, and it's also at the same time providing for your family, but maybe you didn't like it at first. Over time, it becomes very, very enjoyable, and you're watching these skills help provide for your family and for these experiences that you do. I think that's how it happens to a lot of people.
That's exactly how it happened to me. I left LA with the intention of flipping houses to make movies and not really enjoying the construction process. But, I flipped my first house and got my first check, and I was like, yeah, I'm not making movies. This is because I understood the finances of filmmaking.
Mm-hmm.
If I took $25,000 and put it into a movie, it's gone. Like, you're not going to make money on your movie, not back then anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So I realized that I could have this decent life, and slowly but surely learned to love what I was doing. And then when I got into more of a management position and dealing with clients, I absolutely love dealing with clients, whereas a lot of people don't. I like budgeting and scheduling and subcontractors. And I'd rather just travel the world and eat filet mignon. But if I got to work, I really love what I do.
Yeah. Yeah. That's important. Learning to love what you do. So, hey, I think we're coming up on time just about. So
Okay.
I had one more question though. What's been your favorite thing about working in the trades?
It's allowed me a lot of freedom personally. I make my own schedule. I take vacation when I want. I'll go pick my kids up at school if I want. I kind of, at least as a general contractor, can make my own schedule as long as I'm smart with my time and have good subcontractors in place. I get to do what I want when I want, pretty much. A lot of freedom.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. A lot of people would say trades don't allow you any freedom. I do think it depends on what you do, but
Well, I
yeah,
also get in this debate with guys like I don't work more than 40 hours a week and I have a good company. I have a successful company. And certain trades will be like, man, I start at 6 a.m. and I don't get home till 9 o'clock. You're not working hard enough. And I'm like, you're not seeing your kids.
yeah,
Like, my kids are my priority. I don't want to live like that.
yeah,
So, I see a lot with where they think they have to kill themselves to prove something.
yeah. I definitely think that. I think that's part of a mindset and a lifestyle that probably needs to change. Because at the end of the day, my friend Jesse, that's our co-host, always says, he's like, at the end of my life, I don't care if I look back and I've laid a million bricks, but what have I done with my time? Like spent time with my family and all of that. So, yep,
I agree.
I like that. I think we'll end it there. So, Roger, thanks for coming on
Thank you.
again.
I appreciate it. It was good talking
Yeah,
to you. I
yeah.
like what you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So again, it was last minute, but we pulled it off, and with some technical difficulties, but I think that's normal. So at this point, so awesome. I appreciate it, and
Yeah.
we'll keep in touch. So
Looking
see ya.
forward to it.
Yeah.
Take care.